Time to check in once again with the Quincy School Committee Vice Chairman Anthony Andronico for an update on the latest meeting. Hey, Anthony, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Glad to be back and looking forward to providing another update.
Yeah, of which there is a lot to talk about for certain. Not normally the school committee would be meeting in the middle of summer, but here you are with a full plate on your agenda.
Yeah, not typically do we meet during the summer, but, extenuating circumstances for meeting, it seems like at this point, a few times a week. And, this past week we met a few times, and this upcoming week we'll actually be meeting 4 times. So just a few, it's nice to see everyone, but, a lot of work to do as well. So
yeah. Are the meetings still being held remotely, Anthony?
No, so we're actually meeting socially distanced and in person. Main reason being is, any plan that we potentially propose for reopening, whether it be remote or hybrid, essentially the school committee is not going to ask the district, our staff, our students or families to do anything that the school committee is not willing to do. And we're just trying to take the lead and show that it is possible to, follow the safety protocols, wear your masks, be spaced out 6 feet, and adhere to those guidelines.
Yeah, wash your hands and stay home if you are sick. And that goes for any setting, really.
Absolutely, correct.
Yeah. Since last we chatted, the mascot for North Quincy High School has been redesigned.
Yeah, it looks like it got a little bit of a revamp there. I know Mayor Koch and Dr. Yakubian unveiled it at City Hall earlier this week. And, I think it was just time for an update. And I do know that heading into the fall, that North Quincy High School and Principal Shaw are intending to have discussions in general about the topics that students had raised in addition to the mascot. I know they'll still have to figure out exactly what the name is of this new mascot, or even decide if this is the iteration that they'd like to go to. But the understanding is at the very least an update needed to be made to the wardrobe, and I feel like the current version that has been proposed is a good compromise between each side. And I know the mayor had been able to speak to the local Native American tribes as well to get their input into it. But as we move forward, I'm glad to see that there's been a change and a compromise. And I think in particular, I know we're seeing compromise less and less in the world of politics in general. So it is nice to see on the local level that it can still happen.
I know leading up to the change, there was a very active social media comment section, if you will. What do those comments say now with the new Yaku?
I would say for the most part, they're positive. They're glad that the change has been made. And even on the other side, the folks that weren't looking for a change or an update, I feel are pleasantly surprised that there is a compromise and that it still keeps the image of Dr. Yakubian, but with a new set of clothes, effectively, and the side that was pushing for the change is glad that the wardrobe has also updated. So I would say for the most part, people are pleasantly surprised, but at the same time, I think this goes for any decision. There are people that are going to be a little disgruntled, but as we move forward, specifically to the student groups, their voices are going to be important to not only the official renaming, but confirming the choice that has been made by leadership at North Quincy High School.
Sure. Of course, another area where there will be disgruntled folks is the plan to reopen school. Where does that stand right now, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, even looking at our survey that we did with specifically parents, I mean, the breakdown is effectively 1/3 for full in-person, 1/3 for remote, and 1/3 for a hybrid approach. So at least what that tells me is anything we do, there are going to be folks that will be unhappy with the decision, and that's just sort of how it is right now. But that does stand that we need to make a plan that is safe and responsible. So we met on Wednesday of this past week, on the 5th, just to go over the 3 more comprehensive plans that need to be submitted to the state. So just to give a brief refresher, by July 31, we had to submit 3 preliminary plans, 1 for each of them. And then by the August 10th, we need to submit we have to not only select one plan to go with for the fall, but 3 more comprehensive versions of those plans. After some discussion, we felt that it was best to ask for an extension by 1 week with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. We had already been in contact with them prior, and they said they would give us a week extension. So I would expect that decision finally, and we can commit to this on August 12th. So we'll have another meeting about it. But one of the reasons we felt we just needed a touch more information. We're in the middle of conducting an audit on all of our schools regarding ventilation to make sure that there's proper airflow. And so there's, when you're in the middle of an audit for that, we don't want to make a decision and then have to go back and tell folks that we're rolling with a different plan. So we have that to contend with. We also need to ensure that our professional development plan is in place for our staff. And the last bit that the mayor had brought up, and Mr. Mulvey, the interim superintendent, was tech capabilities within school, and particularly around Wi-Fi. So we conducted an audit of the capability of just QPS in general, and there's a need to upgrade the bandwidth of Wi-Fi within our schools, update some of the tech. And, those estimates are about $1 million to bring all of our buildings to the place they need to be. The mayor has committed to making those investments, and I'm very appreciative to him. I know the committee is as well, to make those investments. And that's going to take a little bit of time. So we just needed a better picture of a few outstanding questions before we selected a plan. With that said, I think the committee is leaning between hybrid or remote to start the year, or even having some grades start with hybrid and others go remote. But we're still in the middle of hashing out those questions, receiving more feedback from the community, which any member of the school committee or the administration is happy to take. And the plans in the first were developed after 30 focus groups with the community, with our staff, with our parents and families, and the reopening task force has done a great job of taking into account all of that feedback. So I guess that's a long way of saying we have to wait 1 more week until the 12th before we select the final plan there.
Okay. I know last time we had talked about this, you had said that regardless of which plan is selected, if the parent does not want to send their child into a school building, they will have the option of remote learning. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's correct. And those are the guidelines from the state, is every family will have the option to go full remote if they want. And as far as staff, if you have a medical condition or you need to take care of someone at home, the same applies for them as well. It's a very complicated plan. It's going to be a long one. But the bottom line, I think, for everyone involved is all we want is a safe and responsible plan that promotes the necessary level of learning and keeps folks safe. That's what we're focused on.
What about the school buses, Anthony? Is that part of the discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding, pickups and drop-offs and distancing and how many more buses do we need to the fleet? What's the spacing like on the bus? So we've definitely heard from parents about that, a little concerned, even about the capability of QPS, but we're also ensuring that, the level of need is met within the community. But part of it's going to come into how many families, if we do go with a hybrid, are even willing to send their child in or feel comfortable with that. So, those numbers can fluctuate depending on ultimately what the community says.
Sure. All the school districts are struggling with this. You may have seen down in Plymouth, they're bringing in interim teachers to help with remote learning. Is that something that you've discussed in Quincy?
Yeah, so that will ultimately depend on how many students would select the hybrid plan. Right now, our indication is we won't need to look at hiring additional teaching staff, but it is a possibility that we would. I know we're looking at those that we have on the list, our list for long-term subs, keeping them around, providing further training for paraprofessionals in case at some point they would need to step in. But we're looking at all the options that are there. And again, this goes back to just fine-tuning the plan a little bit and giving the SLT and Superintendent Mulvey just another week to fine-tune the answers to those questions.
Sure. And I'm guessing, too, that the teachers' union would have to approve any plan, correct?
So we would need to reach a memorandum of agreement or understanding, similar to what happened in the spring of this past year, just regarding remote tech and what the expectations are going in. But essentially what we're being told from the state is, any remote instruction has to be live and synchronous, and that's how it has to go. So remote learning in general is not going to look anything like what this past spring looked like. It is much more rigorous, much more in depth. And I know our teachers are on board with that. So we're still in contact with them. We're going through negotiations specifically about an MOA, and I can't get too far into it, but it is public knowledge that we are in discussions with each other.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, in the spring, as the mayor said, you were building the plane as you were flying it, essentially.
Right.
That situation. So you've had some time, obviously, to put together a more comprehensive program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can't thank the team enough for putting those plans together, putting in the time to listen to the community. And, we're still getting new guidance from the state every week. It feels like in a number of different areas. So, having to sort of patch together a plan like that and, have different parts of it need to be adjusted as we get more guidance has presented its challenges. And they're doing a fantastic job, and they're working a lot of overtime, but I really appreciate their work.
Sure. Regardless of what it looks like, Anthony, when will school start in Quincy?
Yeah, so the state actually made some adjustments about when school is allowed to start. They did give communities the option to delay the start of school until September 16th, and they wouldn't require districts to make up those days. So they removed the requirement from 180 days down to 170 days of school a year. And Quincy's taking advantage of that. So our new opening date for students is September 16th, which is a Wednesday. But essentially, regardless of the plan we pick, that was needed. Our staff needs to be trained on health and safety protocols and on the latest tech use and how to use that technology properly. So regardless of whether, we pick hybrid or we pick remote, that needed to happen. And we felt it was in the best interest of everyone involved to extend. And I know some folks might be a little upset about that, but we're just trying to do the best we can with the current situation.
Sure. And everybody, I'm sure, is crossing their fingers for another mild winter again this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
Another, big story, of course, is technology, computers, and how folks access those and utilize them. Is everybody ready to go on that end?
Oh, just about. We're hoping. But yeah, the 5th through 12th grade, we're rolling out a one-to-one Chromebook initiative so that every student in those grades will have the tech they need or the hardware they need in order to participate remotely, in order to complete those assignments and continue learning. But with that update, we needed to review our tech policies as well. And we're just in the home stretch. It looks like at our next meeting on the 12th, we'll have a final plan, but it goes over things like, safety on the internet, user agreements for students in elementary and middle school, and then students for high school. It goes over an employee use agreement. It goes over the expectations of that one-to-one Chromebook initiative. The delay specifically on the Chromebook initiative is, we're looking into providing insurance for our families so that, if your Chromebook gets, say, lost or stolen, you're not responsible for it, for paying back the total cost. If you buy the insurance, it's usually like $10 to $20, something around there. So that's sort of where we're at, but it looks like we'll have that wrapped up by next week. And those policies were developed by myself and a few colleagues of mine regarding or looking at the Mass Association of School Committees best practices in their policy manual, and looking at neighboring districts like Weymouth, for instance, that recently rolled out a one-to-one Chromebook initiative as well. So we're looking and trying to learn from those that have done it before, and that's what our policy seeks to do.
Sure. I think the insurance is a good investment. How much is one of those Chromebooks retail?
My understanding for the Chromebook and the charger is $325.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, personally, I'd buy the insurance, but that's why we're delaying right now, is because, people are going to want to take advantage of that if they get it. And
it's going to happen. Somebody's going to lose one. Someone's going to get stolen or damaged. So, yeah.
Right. It happens. It happens. We want to be able to provide that protection for our families.
Sure. No, I didn't want to ask you, Anthony. I just thought of the governor had mentioned recently that he fully intends to fund the Student Opportunity Act. And what does that mean for Quincy?
Well, essentially for Quincy, fully funding the Student Opportunity Act means a baseline addition of, I believe it's just over $6 million to our budget from whatever the Chapter 70 state funding was going to be for this year. So essentially, the state had come out and said local aid, Chapter 70 aid is going to remain flat from last year to this year. So although there's no standard step increase of Chapter 70 from last year to this year, sort of think of it in two different branches. You get Chapter 70, which is staying the same, and then you have the addition of the Student Opportunity Act funds, which we'll get, which is about $6 million. So that is good news for Quincy. It will continue to allow us to make the investments that we had committed to prior to COVID. Essentially, a lot of social and emotional support and classroom teachers in order to assist those in our high needs population, which is the purpose of the Student Opportunity Act, to close that achievement gap between non-high needs and high needs students. So that's still what we're focused on. I think that's good news. I'm glad to hear that the governor at least is committed to that. And that's a good thing for Quincy moving forward. We're going to need those funds.
Yeah, and good that you as a committee, stuck to the mandates and provided the state with the plan to use that money.
Right, absolutely. And that was a culmination of talks with all of those different groups that were effective in various PTOs or PACs, and we developed that plan together. So I'm looking forward to, frankly, getting those funds so we can reinvest it into the community.
Sure. If you could bring us up to date on the search for a new superintendent.
Sure. Yeah, so we had the opportunity to conduct our very first interview with Dr. Omar Easy from Everett. And the next two are scheduled for this upcoming Tuesday, which I want to say is the 11th, with Interim Superintendent Mulvey. And then on the 13th, Thursday the 13th, with Dr. Jamal Mosley, the current superintendent in Nashua. Those are each at 6 o'clock. And, I'm glad that QATV is helping us out, broadcasting those and providing a live stream. So folks have to tune in there to watch the interviews. And then we'll select one of those three finalists at our meeting on Friday, which is specifically to select a superintendent. And we'll go from there. So, within the next week, we'll select a reopening plan and a new superintendent. So, a lot of heavy decisions coming up, but that's where my time's going to be devoted over the next week or so.
Indeed, yeah, and long-lasting decisions. After the superintendent is selected, what happens then?
So essentially, at that point, the vote on Friday is to enter into negotiations with the candidate, and you kind of go from there. So, I mean, depending on who you select, the start date for that individual could be right away, could be a couple weeks, it could be January 1, it could be the start of next year. It just depends on how the negotiations go, and that is also part of it when you're making a decision on a superintendency is how long before that individual can be in place, everything else that goes along with it. So that's the process.
Okay, yeah, and as I understand from the mayor, it's just a simple majority vote.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right. Anything else we should touch on today, do you think, Anthony?
Nothing else for now, but folks can always contact me at anthonyandronico@quincypublicschools.com. More than happy to have a conversation about anything, and I know every member of the committee feels the same.
All right. Appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up again soon, certainly before the start of school.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.